I heard you compare President Obama to a 10th century king of England, Ethelred the Unready. Make the connection.
Well, Ethelred the Unready was somebody who was unable to withstand repeated invasions by the Danes who were marauding up and down the English coast, and he tried to buy his way out of the difficulties, and he never succeeded. So he goes down in English history as a failed king who couldn't protect England from dangers from abroad, and to me it looks a lot like Barack Obama.
That's a pretty strong indictment. Specifically, what about the Obama administration's foreign policy do you take exception?
Well, I think the overall approach of President Obama is that he's very comfortable with American decline. He thinks that American strength and protecting our interests and those of our friends and allies around the world is provocative, and that it causes other nations to treat us unkindly. So that if we were just less assertive, less strong, less visible, that things would get better in the world. I think that's like looking at the world through the wrong end of a telescope. I think it's exactly the opposite of reality. I think it's American weakness that's provocative. It's weakness that inspires our adversaries to try and take advantage of us for their own objectives. And I think we've seen that throughout the first term. And I fear that because our adversaries have taken the measure of this president, both in terms of his weakness and his inattentiveness to national security issues, that if he were to get a second term, in fact, the pace and the scope of challenges we face internationally would actually increase.
Iran. How large will that subject loom in the next administration?
Well, I think it's going to loom large regardless of who wins the election, but I think it's a particular risk if Obama wins, because I think at that point the only thing that would stand between Iran and nuclear weapons would be the possibility of an Israeli military strike. Iran's been after nuclear weapons for 20 years. They're very close to achieving that objective. The Obama administration has wasted 3.5 years, and the world is going to be a much more dangerous place if Iran gets nuclear weapons, because it's not going to stop with Iran. Saudi Arabia will get nuclear weapons, Egypt will, Turkey will, perhaps others in the Middle East, so that this very volatile region in 5 or 10 years, a short period of time as these things go, could have half a dozen nuclear weapon states. That's a prescription for disaster.
What would a President Romney do, given as far along as Iran is? What would a President Romney do to interdict and stop Iran from moving forward?
Well, I think he's made it very clear that he's not going to allow Iran to get nuclear weapons. I think he's been wise not to be very specific on the subject, so that the way the dishonest Obama campaign mechanism works, they take his statements and try and twist them unfairly. This is a very serious issue, and nobody should underestimate the dangers that a nuclear Iran could cause.
Given America's fatigue with Afghanistan, given the negative impact Iraq had on the Bush administration, how do you interdict Iran without risking the American people saying, here we go again, and not supporting it?
Well, let me address that in general terms, because I think it's another aspect of the Obama administration that's been a real failure. It is, I believe, the duty of the American president to protect American interests around the world, and to talk to the American people in an adult conversation about what our interests are, what's at stake, what the risks are. This president has consistently not done that. One of the reasons he's the most radical president we've ever had is he's the first one since Franklin Roosevelt, on a bipartisan basis, not to wake up every morning thinking, what dangers does the United States face in the world today? And on Afghanistan, on Iraq, on Iran, you name it, he has not explained to the American people what our interests are and what we need to do to protect them. So that's why foreign engagement appears so unpopular to the American people. It's perfectly reasonable. If nobody's explaining what's at stake, they naturally turn their attention to something else. That is a real failure of presidential leadership.
Is there any non-military way to keep Iran from going forward?
Well, unfortunately, at this point, unless there's regime change in Tehran, which is something you can't turn on and off like a light switch, I don't see it. Now, it's clear the Obama administration's not going to do anything, which is why the spotlight is on Israel, and why people are talking about the prospect of Israel doing something in the near future. I don't claim to have any inside information about Israel. I do know that twice in their past, they have struck hostile nations with advanced nuclear weapons programs, and I don't think they'll hesitate to do it again if they think there's no other option.
Very well. Ambassador, thank you very much for your time.
Glad to be with you.